Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the summer edition, the first episode of our Same Old Arsenal podcast. It's me, Chris, Suburban Goon and Chris, joining you as always, like we did last season. If those of you who are regulars of the Same Old podcast community will remember, last summer we trialled a summer section, and I got a few friends along to have a chat, and it went quite well. So we're going to do it again this year, and we're going to have a little bit of a debate because we've just been in the online green room on a couple of the choices from last year. I'll introduce my guests in a second, but before I do that, just a quick one to remind you guys, if you weren't already aware, we are sponsored by Ruth Beck Art, and Ruth does some fantastic artwork which you can get on her Etsy shop. So if you just search Ruth Beck Art on Etsy, you can find it. I've got a couple of bits that she sent across to me actually, because it's Father's Day at the moment, and I know there's a couple of fathers on the podcast with me, so maybe they'll be hoping to be getting some gifts of this ilk. So there's some lovely cards that Ruth's got at the moment. There's also some really interesting. They are mats for glass for your glass. So really interesting stuff. And,
coasters is the word you're looking for.
That's it. Coasters. I lost my words for a second. Coasters. Thank you very much, David. Let's introduce our guests then before we get into the concept. And David, Mr. Seager, Gooner Day 66. How are you doing, sir? You all right?
I'm very well, very well. It feels like weeks since I last saw you, Chris.
Weeks, because it literally was end of the season. Let's introduce our next guest. To my bottom left, it's Albert JTV. Albert, you're all right?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Always happy to come on, Chris, and share a stream with you, mate. 100%.
Always lovely to see you and to have you on as well. Making your one in, one out, one bangs, and I'll explain the concept for anybody listening in for the first time in a second. But before I finish off and round up our wonderful quartet today, I've got Akhil Vyas, who is a friend, somebody who I've met at football a number of times. Oh, come on, mate. Of course you are. Don't
sort of hesitate a little bit.
I call you a friend, but it may not be reciprocal. You might just say,
"No, it's not that." It was a slight hesitation. I felt there was a little bit of a friend. It was sort of, I don't know. It wasn't a friend. It wasn't that.
Definite reticence. Definite reticence. You're right. Shocking.
Somebody who's already beginning in the banter. And I will get him back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't you worry about that. If you want to put any comments in the chat when the chaps are talking, I will put those in there. So if you want to say hello, like Gona73 has, or like Kevin has, or Avon as well. And of course, the lovely Karen Russell too. And pop your questions in. If we get time, we'll get through to the questions. I'm going to talk format first, and then I'm going to relive a little bit from last year for those people who are just joining us for the first time. So last year, as I said, we ran a section called One In, One Out, One Bangs every week. The concept is that you have saved Mikel Arteta from a burning bush or a poolside accident, and he has granted you 3 wishes. One is that you can sign any player that you want. Try and keep it realistic. Last year, we had a couple of Harry Kanes or Messi or stuff like that. Try and keep it realistic, boys and girls. One player that you think or you would like to see sold, and you can give your reasons. And one player that you think is going to bang next season. Now, Albert, you weren't on the show last season when we did this. So I'm going to get you to go first when we actually go for our choices. But before we do that, let's relive a little bit of what happened last year. And we were just debating. I'm going to start with you, Akhil, because we were just debating. I've got written down that last year in June, you said that you wanted Ivan Toney in, Eddie Nketiah out, and William Saliba bangs. Now, I will give you your props, sir, for William Saliba, because he did bang, and he had an absolutely fantastic season and stayed fit. But talk to me about Ivan Toney and Eddie Nketiah.
Real psychic, that one.
Well, I think the Eddie Nketiah was purely because there was a little bit of interest, homegrown, the way financial fair play works and all that kind of stuff. It's homegrown players, unfortunately, are bigger assets now. With Ivan Toney, if I remember rightly, I said someone like Ivan Toney. So I never give names.
Look at him, wriggle out already.
No. It was someone. It was an alternative to Gabriel Jesus. And actually, Kai Havertz did that. So I think I was actually right.
To be fair to
Kind
Akhil, he couldn't
You're
have
going to
said
blame him.
sign Ivan Toney because Ivan Toney was banned at the time and he was banned
Exactly.
till Christmas. So even Akhil wouldn't have come up with that.
Even I'm not that silly. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So what I'll do then this year is I'll put a little brackets in there if you want to sign someone like someone, and then we can
Yeah.
relive it and we'll not talk through the technicalities of last year. Dave, your choices, if you remember rightly, were Mohamed Kudus to come in. Remember, this is players that you want to see, so it's not obviously going to happen. There's lots of different choices in
It
there.
couldn't happen at the time.
So
That
you know,
could have
I
easily
don't think
happened
that
at
was.
the time.
Yeah, I don't think that was a particularly bad idea because I think he's had a very good season at West Ham. You had Kieran Tierney out. Well, he technically, I guess, did go out because he went out on loan. And you had one player to bang was Gabriel Jesus, which, injury aside, I don't think worked, did it?
Well, it didn't because of injuries, but
You
who knows?
want to offer any kind of rebuttal on that?
If he hadn't got injured and he was playing like he played at the start of last season, we never might have seen Kai Havertz at centre forward. You don't know, do you?
Yeah, very, very true. Very, very true. All right. Albert. So concept is, as we said, 1 in, 1 out, 1 bangs. You've saved Mikel Arteta from a burning bush. You've dragged him out. And he says, Albert, your wish is my command. What can I do for you? Let's kick that one off. What are you saying? What are you thinking? Who's your one player that you'd like to see join us this summer?
Oh, that's an easy one for me, Chris. I've said this guy's name since probably December last year. Victor Gyökeres, 100%.
Yeah,
I saw a bit of We say why. You know what it is? I think a lot of people sort of turn their nose up at strikers or players, but I'm going to specifically talk about strikers who have come from a league that is lower down from the Premier League, for example. So he's done well at Coventry. Watched him play a bit. Really like what I saw. Coventry got some very good money for him when he went to Sporting Lisbon. I think he got it for about 20 million. And he's kicked on. I know people talk about it's the Portuguese league, but I always say to people, you have to start somewhere. You have to play your football somewhere. And I think he hit 43 plus goal contributions last season. It's phenomenal. Complete striker, got speed, good in the air, can play wide right, wide left, but I'd have him personally centrally. At the time, I think in terms of release clause, they spoke about probably about £87 million, but that's probably gone up a little bit more in sort of what he's done last season. So for me, he's the person I absolutely would love at Arsenal. Whether it would happen or not, we're not too sure, but I know Arsenal probably look at him, and I know there's talk about obviously a certain guy has been spoken about in the last 2 or 3 days, but I think Gyökeres is probably would have been on Arsenal's radar. But yeah, I would love him at the red carpet, Chris, personally.
All right, Akhil, I'm going to give you a chance to just have some thoughts on that. And also, where your first sort of choice for that one player you want to see, because I feel like a lot of the conversation this summer is going to be about strikers. Are you same?
Yeah.
Or are you looking somewhere else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, people will be looking up front, and Isaac's obviously been spoken about. There's been, the chap. But I mean, absolutely a striker. But I sort of look at the midfield a little bit more. I think there's a lot of goals in this side. I still think we need a striker, and I ultimately believe Mikel Arteta would sell Eddie Nketiah to get another option in, and potentially then keep Jesus and Kai Havertz. But I look at that central midfield, and I look at we've essentially had to replace our whole midfield, our 2 in 3 windows. So Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey were our 2, and fair play to them. They sort of nearly took us to the league title last year or season before, rather now. But Granit Xhaka went, Declan Rice came in. Now Thomas Partey's got 1 year left on his contract. We sort of saw that Declan Rice, I'm sure for England he will play as a holding midfielder just in front of the back 4. But we saw at Arsenal that actually, potentially he's more of a number 8, and he actually played really well. Better on the press, can win the ball higher up, reminded me so much of Patrick Vieira at times. And how Patrick Vieira used to win the ball high up that led, the Ljungberg, the Perez is just to go because they knew Vieira wins it, they're off. And we sort of saw that a little bit with certainly with Saka. I think the left side was a little bit interrupted. I think with Martinelli, he had an injury, and then Trossard came in and stuff like that. But so I think I look at that midfield, I look at Thomas Partey to think whether he stays this summer or not. He's only got a year left, not much talk. So for me, I will look at that central midfield. Who I'm going to go similar to last year when I said someone like Ivan.
Here he goes, hedging his bets.
Well, I'm just, what, I absolutely love Arsenal, obsessed with Arsenal, but I will not pretend I know the world of football. The stuff at the Arsenal Supporters Trust certainly keeps me kind of ingrained in the governance of the game, but not particularly on the pitch. So I would say someone like a Douglas Luiz type of player, someone who's going to hold, who's a bit of a baller, can play, because we saw again when Jorginho played, we controlled games. Jorginho played at Anfield, at City, played against, I think, both of them at home as well. He certainly, Jorginho was a very important player for us this year. But so I would say, like, the next Jorginho, an upgrade on Jorginho to play alongside Rice. And at times, Rice might play as that sort of protector against teams at home where you might want to play Odegaard and a slightly more creative player. But I would look at that midfield as someone like Douglas Luiz for me. Because I think the striker bit will come anyway. So that's kind of like, it's going to happen.
Well, actually, I will stick with you just for a second, Axe, and then we'll move on to Dave for his choice. Do you think that Arsenal will go either big for both, like as in that midfielder? Because do you think they will go big for them? Because everyone's sort of talking as if Partey's probably on his way out, and he's injured quite a lot of times. And do you think they'll also then go big for a striker, or do you think it will be one of? And I'll let you answer it first, and then I'll go to Dave and Albert. So because I don't want to keep you out of the conversation, guys.
I think if you were to ask me now, it's probably one. The reason why I say that, I remember 18 months ago when we did the stadium unveiling and stuff like that, there was a little thing in Angel where a couple of us were invited to, and I remember talking to like Tim Lewis, who's ultimately the board member who runs Arsenal Football Club, and I asked him, what's your biggest challenge now? And he said it's to show we can sell well, because for years we were always like, Arsenal don't buy that well, we don't renew contracts well, but actually we're doing that quite well. You would say 90% of every player in the last 3 windows has been pretty good. Fabio Vieira is the only one, I think, that jury's out. Contracts have been really good. We've re-signed pretty much everyone. But selling, we haven't quite done that. And Dave's person last year, Kieran Tierney, my person who I said, Eddie Nketiah, we just ultimately couldn't get them over the line. So I think it's going to come down to that. If you can sell well, if you can sell Eddie Nketiah, Kieran Tierney, there's been rumours about Emil Smith-Rowe as well, which I know will upset a lot of us, and I've got a picture of him behind there. It'll upset a lot of us because he's homegrown, but all 3 of them are homegrown players, which then means on the books, they're pure profit. And if you do sell them, you then can go potentially for 2 biggies. I'm not sure we'll get much money for Thomas Partey. I think it's more of a case of, he's on big wages. If a team came in, we would probably do one of those deals, not exactly an Aubameyang deal, let him go, but we would do something like that where we would think, actually, if we could save the wages for a whole year on 200 grand a week, we probably would let him go for pretty much nothing. But it's all about how we sell those homegrown players, if we sell them. Kieran Tierney isn't home, but you get what I mean, the other 2.
Yeah, we get a bigger market value for a player that was from the British Isles, I guess you would say, despite his injury records. Dave, I just want to go to you, and then I'll talk to Albert before we get your choice, Dave. So do you think we go big for those 2? Or are you in the same boat as Akhil, and you think it's probably going to be one big name, but maybe we go after maybe slightly different options depending on selling?
No, I think there'll be. Thing is, in previous windows, we've had so many holes that we needed to fill. We're now in a situation where I think most fans know pretty much what we need to do, and I think Arteta won't be any different. I think he's going to sign. It looks like he's going to sign a left back. He's going to sign a midfield player. He's going to sign a striker. The only question for me is whether he signs a wide striker or whether he signs an out-and-out centre forward. But they'll be the 3 signings, in my view.
Yeah,
and I actually, we're going off piece slightly. I actually think he may go for an out-and-out wide left player, and we might see more of Martinelli as the alternative third striker. I think that's quite a strong possibility, actually.
That would be quite interesting. Albert, what do you reckon? What do you reckon we're doing? Do you reckon we're going big in 2 positions, big in 1 position, sort of sell to buy type thing?
It kind of touches on the point what Akhil was saying. Because one thing I know, the transfer window, and there's certain players that Arsenal fans that want to come in, but one thing I want Arsenal to do well is sell well. Because I still think we're way behind the 8 ball compared to. I know your likes of City and Chelsea spend a lot of money, but if you actually look at the player sales they made, I mean, City, Ferran Torres, Sterling, Zinchenko, Jesus, Chelsea, Abraham, Kurt Zuma, for Tomorrow, they've been bringing some really good money, man. Arsenal need to start doing that. So that's one thing I've been looking out for. So that will help us bring players in. But Chris, with the striker thing, the reason why I know he scored a lot of goals last season, undoubtedly, goals by committee, but there were 2 games last season for me where, in terms of strikers, you have some clutch moments in games. And the first one was North London Derby at home last season. Jesus has a chance to go and put us 2-0 up against Spurs. Different game. The away game at Manchester City, the Etihad, when Ødegaard put through Bukayo Saka, Saka knocks it across. I think your clutch man, your main man, your top man, your striker who knows his sort, gets himself ahead of Akanji and puts us 1-0 up against City away. It's fine margins, but it's those small percentages that do make a difference. So that's why I'm big on the striker market. Whether it will pump in enough money to bring in a striker, and it depends in terms of midfield. It depends who you're looking at, really. Because I was chucking another name, by the way. You guys probably would have heard about him or seen him. Because if Partey, which I don't expect him to be here personally, that I've always thought that probably since the turn of the year. But if he does move on for argument's sake, the guy at Monaco, Youssef Fofana, player, man, serious player, complete midfield player, and he wouldn't burn a hole massively in the pocket at Arsenal. But he's one player I do hope they're looking at. But I don't think they'll have to go crazy, personally, Arsenal, coming back into the Champions League. And as Akhil's mentioned, for me, the player sales thing is a massive thing for me. Because obviously you've got your likes of Reece Nelson, you've got Emil Smith-Rowe, you've got Eddie. You'll get, I don't know what you class as good money. We'll cross that bridge when it comes to it, but we'll get some decent money for, like you said, homegrown players. And
Ramsdale. I mean,
yeah, Ramsdale's a great point. Yeah. So listen,
biggest.
Yeah. So we're at a point now where you're looking at Edu and the likes of Richard Garlick. You say this is your time. This is your time to generate that money, and so we can bring in the quality of player that Mikel wants to bring in.
Yep. And you know what as well? So last year, Burnley paid, what was it, 20 million quid or something silly for James Trafford, goalkeeper, who'd barely got any Premier League minutes. Aaron Ramsdale's got big Premier League minutes, so we need to make big money on him. And I saw as well today, I don't know, I think it's happened in the last week or so, the lad at Southampton from Man City, Taylor Harwood-Bellis, he's had his loan deal made permanent for 20 million quid. Like that kid's basically not played for City, and he's going for 20 million quid. So we do need to do those sales. We're going to come on to sales. I'm going to do 2 in 1 actually with you, Dave. Give us your 1 in, and then we'll move on to the 1 out, and then I'll go to Akhil and Albert. So who's your 1 in?
I mean, I've got 2 1-ins in my mind, but I can't very well not say
that's not the definition of 1, is it?
Seeing as I wrote a blog saying he's the midfield player I'd like to see a sign, and there's several reasons for that. And I do accept the Fofana point. He's more like Jorginho, and he is, I think, believes only 20 million release clause, so great. But I look at what Arteta's done the last few windows, and he's buying Premier League players, he's buying Premier League ready players. And that's what would worry me about someone who's playing for Monaco. Whereas Onana, I mean, the rehearsal was perfect. I mean, he was the best player on the pitch against us the last game. We've seen what he can do. And I think with Onana, what I like is it gives me that sort of Gilberto Vieira vibe. We're going for statuesque, athletic, strong players, tall players who are going to beat other teams in the dressing room. that sort of midfield pairing of Rice and Onana has that sort of feel for me. And the thing I like about it is he can play 6 and let Rice, as we've talked about, play further forward. But equally, in bigger games where he wants to go back to a double pivot and play, 4-2-3-1, he can play Onana, and Rice together. And equally, because Rice is such an intelligent footballer, Onana's an incredible ball carrier, same as Rice. So if Onana's on the rampage, then Rice will just sit. He's that bright. So I really like that idea. I mean, I know some people would say they're worried about his pass percentage and how he's going to progress the ball if he's not carrying it. But I look at his pass percentage forward; it's about 85% playing for a struggling side with awful forwards. So it's easy to say Declan Rice is 90%. Well, he's playing with some of the best midfield players in Europe. So he's going to find his passes because our movement is that good. So for Onana to only be 4 or 5% behind Rice, I don't accept that argument. And I just think Everton have to sell a big player, and they can sell Branthwaite, they can sell Onana. There's 2 or 3 they can sell. I don't think they want to sell Branthwaite. We don't need Branthwaite. We do need a midfield player because, as we've all said, I think Partey will leave this summer, and he's my one. He's the one that I would really like to see because I think it's very practical.
Good
I think
shout,
it improves us, and I think, although they're talking 60, 70 mil, I think we'd be talking 40, 50 mil. And probably we could do 40, 50 mil with Smith-Rowe and Nketiah, bringing it down further, quite frankly.
Save it, get that money for Smith-Rowe and Nketiah, and then it's basically the old net spend 0, and you can go for that striker that Albert wants.
Absolutely. Simple. Well, it's interesting because both Palace and Fulham are being linked with Nketiah and Smith-Rowe, and the other one, I know I'm not allowed to have 2, but I would throw the kitchen sink to bring Eze to Arsenal.
Oh,
really, not just because of the way he played the other night. We are crying out for that on our left, and he can play left wing, he can play left 8. I mean, he's just got the whole bag of tricks, and he's an Arsenal fan, and he's got a point to prove because we released him age 13. Yeah,
Dave,
if anyone's got a point to prove.
Dave,
there you go. Sorry, I've had 2. I've had 2 there.
You can't have that one. I'm not writing that one down. I've got to take your first answer. You've got to take your first answer. So let's go for the one out then. You get one player that you can pick to exit. We might actually.
I would drive him
to how much?
I would drive him to Bayern Munich. Zinchenko for me, please. Yeah, happily see Zinchenko leave. Yeah, I bought into it 2 years ago that we needed him for possession. We were playing the inverted fullback. We're not playing the inverted fullback. He's not a great left back. We've got better, and he will get good money. So that's the one for me. We don't need him. We needed him when we signed him. We don't need him now, and people want him. He's an international captain.
Yeah, I feel like that. I'm going to bring Akhil and Albert just to give me some thoughts on that as well, because I think that's an interesting one. And the reason it's an interesting one is much like Arteta did when he brought Zinchenko to Arsenal. He's had that connection, that Man City connection. You've got company now at Bayern. So it feels like that one could be us putting 2 and 2 together and making 26, but it feels a little bit more like it's on the cards. What do you reckon?
He'll probably sign Lokonga as
well. If there's one thing we've learned about Mikel Arteta is he's absolutely ruthless. And again, I remember when he was first appointed. Not actually even when he was first appointed. It was actually when Unai Emery was appointed. But obviously Mikel was a front runner then, and I remember being in an AST meeting with Ray Parlour and Henry Winter, and I remember Henry Winter saying, because he had just interviewed Raheem Sterling, and Raheem Sterling told him how hard Mikel Arteta is, i.e. he was as hard as nails. He was, if you crossed him, you knew. And we all sort of just thought, okay, cool at the time. We didn't quite, but then we saw it with Ozil, Aubameyang, sort of Guendouzi. And you kind of see, right, okay, he's actually ruthless. Then we saw Aaron Ramsdale come in, and then David Raya come in and take his place like that. Without really, Ramsdale didn't really make a mistake, did he? The Fulham one, I'll put that down more to Saka's bad pass then. So, and remember how ruthless it was, because he actually played against Man United. At home, we won. He then played at Wembley against Scotland, and England won, and then suddenly didn't play again, really. So he's ruthless. So I can totally see the Zinchenko thing, because Zinchenko potentially was there at the time top 4 established. Remember, we all talk about this process, project, whatever you want to call it. We were 8th when we started this project. It was first get back into the Europe field. We did that. Then establish ourselves as a top 4 club again. It wasn't get into the Champions League once. It was establish ourselves. We've done that because we've been in the title race twice. Some players who helped us get there along the way will not be there at the end, because if they were, why were we late in the first place? So you've seen players kind of come, maybe take us to their maximum and go. Granit Xhaka, another great example. So again, I think Zinchenko could be the next one. And I was actually going to say my one could be Gabriel Jesus. And I'm going to come in now just because it feels right.
Yeah, do it.
It's very easy to go Eddie Nketiah, Smith Rowe, Nelson, Ramsdale, because we all know Kieran Tierney, we all know they're a bit surplus to requirements. Ramsdale would love to keep, of course, but he's got ambitions to play. But if you were to, if we take this seriously, let's be a little bit more controversial, then actually I look at that team and I think, who is there to go? There was rumours about a year ago that Arsenal would look to move one of their big players on, just to slightly balance the books a little bit and stuff like that. There was a bit of talk on Martinelli, and the way the season ended as well. Martinelli couldn't really get into the side, but I would say Martinelli's got a bigger ceiling. Gabriel Jesus was great for us for the first year at least. He brought a mentality in for sure, but we're talking about strikers already. We were talking about a striker last year. We suddenly saw Kai Havertz come in and, well, he was very good, wasn't he, in that second half of the season. We're still talking about a striker, which means we're not happy with the striker we have. So, if you could get your money back on Gabriel Jesus, then I think that would be very tempting. Very, very tempting.
I reckon there's something in that as well. I think both those are two really, really good choices for really both very good reasons. Arteta is ruthless, and Zinchenko and Gabriel Jesus changed our world, as he said, but our world is constantly changing and evolving. But the Gabriel Jesus one is interesting because he'll have a big reputation as well. Go on, Dave.
Chris, can I just interject there on those two? Everyone's been saying ever since we signed him that he could play Zinchenko in midfield. He plays in midfield for Ukraine. He's never, ever done it, right? So that's one thing. Jesus can cover Saka, and he has done it. He did it at the end of the season. So he can use Jesus as a wide right player. He can't. He can use Zinchenko in a multiple positions. He hasn't. He's only ever used him as the inverted left back. That's why I think Jesus is more likely to stay, because he can play any of the positions across the front three. Zinchenko has only ever been used in one position.
I think the thing about that to sort of counter that, and then I'll bring Albert in for his choice of one player he thinks might leave, or he would say is his one out, is that if we sell the likes for good price, the likes of Tierney, Ramsdale, Smith Rowe, for example, then perhaps you can use that money, as well as they'll have a pot of money on top of that. So you could use it to fund that midfielder like an Onana, and especially if you're getting him cheap, and you can use it to fund a player who can play across the front three. And so therefore, maybe there's an option for Gabriel Jesus to be moved on for that reason. And he's quite injury prone as well. I think they're both really, really good choices, though. Albert, from your point of view, who would be your one out, or have the lads already, has one of them stolen your thunder?
I don't know if they have they? Mine was Eddie, to be honest with you. I think the time is now, man. Sometimes in life, it's about timing, and kind of thanks for your services, but go and find your career. Go and enjoy the rest of your career at another club. And there's one game last season, Chris, I was like, we need to move him on. I'm not, and it wasn't just to be. I was not saying it to be horrible, but I think we played Wolves at home, and he had a chance. I couldn't believe he missed it. I think it inside of the. I said you have to score that opportunity, because that game we won it 2-1 in the end, but it could have gone a little bit awry if you didn't put that chance away. But that was the moment for me. I said, you know what, he's come in, and I know Mikel likes him, and he works the channels and he works hard, but you need a little bit more than that. You need a little bit more cutting edge. You need something a bit more clinical. And that game, I just said, you know what, I think it's time to move him on. He's had enough chances at Arsenal. It's not about getting behind the players for me with him is he's had a lot of chances at Arsenal. Mikel's shown a lot of faith in him. I know towards the back end of last season, he kind of benchwarmed quite a bit, but I just think he needs to be moved on. I know Palace has spoken about probably 2 seasons ago, technically now. The links obviously were Fulham. And I think the money they're talking about in terms of we move him on, I think that's about right. I thought that when we sold Willock, I said take the money and run. And I would have drove him to North East, not because I don't like him, I just would have done it anyway to get the money in. But and I think if they're talking about 30 million for Eddie, I think that's about right. If they get more than that, I think Arsenal absolutely. I think they con the market if they get more than that personally. But I think that's about right for him.
Yeah, I would take that as well. It's quite interesting.
Yeah,
I was going to say, he's an example, isn't he, of that project, that process, that he played his part when we were trying to get back into that Europa, potentially with the top 4 bit. But beyond that, the quality goes up. Otherwise, as I said, we wouldn't have been in that position in the first place. So it's kind of a case of it's okay to have players who have got to a certain level. And then you think, okay, we have to now go a bit more elite because we're buying in a different market. I would anyone you would ask the question: would you sign Eddie Nketiah today? No, let's be honest, nobody would at Arsenal. So, but fair play.
Quite fortunate. I think we're quite fortunate that the football world's moved on financially as well, because the worry when we gave him 100 grand a week was who can afford that, and probably 2 years ago, 6 clubs. Now, probably most of the Premier League, but the new ownership, new injections of money, 100 grand a week is not a crazy money even for a middle tier Premier League side. Whereas 2 years ago, that would have been a concern. It's no longer a concern.
Chris, sorry, quickly,
no, exactly.
Chris, quickly, so just quickly about Martinelli. I think for me, just 2 seasons ago, one thing I was looking for him was more goals. He done that. I think for the position he plays in the side, for me, you have to have more assists. And for me, for him to do that, one thing the slight criticism I had with him, I don't know what the guys feel or people in the chat. And I'll give you a perfect example. He played Manchester United away and Ødegaard's put him through. He didn't look up once, Chris. He's got to have that better awareness and that making that final decision. That's the only criticism of him. That will come. And I'm hoping now that Timber's come back, you will see hopefully a better Martinelli. Because I'm not sure if Mikel feels like Saka or Martinelli can play like swap interchange, or I'd like to see a little bit more personally going into next season. I personally would like to see that, but I think it'd be interesting to see if Martinelli does come back to what we saw sort of 12 months ago. Now with Timber back in the side, hopefully I'm right to see that.
Yeah, we'll have to see.
Chris knows my view on Martinelli is if Martinelli's going to go to the next level, he's got to start using both feet. He just simply has to. It's crazy. Every fullback
he needs to get his head up. He needs to. Yeah, he's a bit more awareness.
But 2 years ago, Saka didn't use his right foot. He's scoring belters with his right foot 2 seasons on. You have to make that decision as a player.
Elevate.
You can't be a world class. He's a Brazilian international. You can't be a world class wide striker, and never use the wrong foot. He only shoots with it when he has to. He'll always look to get on his right every time, and that's what stopped him for me going to the next level.
Yeah, and as
Trossard uses both feet, by the way. Trossard uses both feet.
Yeah, and as Albert said,
forgetting about Trossard, Martinelli's not in the team. Trossard has not done anything to lose that shirt right now.
No, at this rate, he'll be certainly keeping it for the start of next season. Right, let's move on to our one bangs. We do also have a question about the Man City stuff, which I'll touch on for like a couple of minutes. Get all of the lads' view on, the noises that came the noises that came out of the Times article from yesterday. I think it was Matt Lawton from the Times. We will come to that as a final sort of question before we wrap up today. But Dave, actually, I'll start with Akhil, then I go to Dave and then Albert. One to bang next season, because he nailed it with William Saliba last year, mate, and he stayed fit. So are you going to just go for that? Is he just going to get even better, or are you going to pick a newbie this year?
When you said that, Dave gave a little bit of stick there. He sort of stated the obvious there. So I think I'm going to try and, go a little bit more. I think it was out of him and Ødegaard last year, actually. But don't know. Okay. Maybe that was stating the obvious too. By the way, anyone who said Ben White last year, I think they absolutely nailed it. I think that was exceeded expectations beyond. Anyway, it's hard really because all of our players are at a level right now where I think they're playing pretty well. A lot of them have bigger ceilings, so we'll continue. I think Makayo will continue to improve. I think Odegaard will. I think Declan Rice will. But who's going to explode? And you think it's really hard. It's actually really hard because I'm saying, can I say Kai Havertz? But did he already bang in that second half of the season? I mean, the easy one to say is probably Timber because, we haven't seen enough of him, and we saw a bit in pre-season. He looked pretty good. One of the comments then said Martinelli. I agree. I think Martinelli's got a lot to prove as well. But yeah, let's go Timber.
Take the low-hanging fruit and say Timber, mate, because that would be my choice. Because I remember
a lot of the comments are saying Martinelli, aren't they? A lot of the comments are saying Martinelli.
Could be.
For me, I remember going to the Community Shield and I was with Giles, our mate Giles, Gurundi Tweets, and I just leant over to him at the Community Shield after about 20 minutes and I said, I actually think I already love Jurrien Timber. His poise on the ball, his control, vertical, the strength and depth of his passing. So take the low-hanging fruit, Akhil. Take the low-hanging fruit and go for Timber. Or
can I mean, again, this feels like I'm sort of, but I mean, I would also go Bukayo Saka in terms of absolute elite. At the moment, I think we've got very, very good players. Is Bukayo Saka world class yet? Is he on that? And I honestly think he could be, in terms of numbers, a Mo Salah. And ultimately, I think that's the dilemma as well Mikel Arteta has, because if you have a striker who is that, Albert said it, that elite, who's gonna get in front of a Kanji to score at Man City, and who's gonna a Haaland-esque, then suddenly your wide players potentially their role changes. Liverpool have always had a Darwin Núñez or a Firmino. Their job's never to score 20 goals. You know what I mean? So I can see just Saka being that real explosion, that 20 goals plus with another 12, 15 assists. I can just really see him exploding. The obvious worry with him is he's just playing so many games that you just worry about him physically. But all right, if you want me to go, I'm gonna actually go Saka, but to be elite, essentially to win Premier League. For me to be right, yes, to win Premier League.
Top three Ballon d'Or. Top three Ballon d'Or.
That might be stretching it a bit, Dave. Let's keep our feet on the ground, but
that's elite.
And Karen in the chat has just said again she'd give a shout to Bukayo, but I think we all know what you mean. It's like it feels like we need that sort of Salah type evolution of Saka. The only thing that I would say, and Dave, I'll get your views on who's going to bang, but the only thing I'd say just on the final bit on Saka is again he's played a lot, as you said, Akhil. He's also kicked to pillar to post, and I feel like Alexis Sanchez was like that, and he was robust and was absolutely fine and played game after game after game until he broke down. And I think United, he didn't play very much because of injury, and he's had injury problems ever since. He was robust until he wasn't. But Dave, give us your one to bang for next season.
Well, let's just make it a bit left field because it could happen. Let's just go Ethan and Wherry. Why not? I mean, if I think Vieira may go on loan. I think Smith Rowe will be sold. There's going to be a role on the bench for someone who's going to come into those midfield positions next season. And everything Arteta says suggests that he's going to be involved in the first team next season. So, we could have a Jack Wilshere situation. Who knows? Wouldn't that be lovely?
Oh, that'd be good. That would be lovely. Having already had the likes of Saka coming through and rocking our world, and Emile Smith-Rowe doing the same. And Reece Nelson hasn't been able to bang, but there was an early promise there, and he has got game time, and Nketiah too. So we have had plenty of players coming through the system and doing well for us. Albert, give us your one to bang.
It's been said, but yeah, I would have gone Urine Timber as well. So sad to lose him first game of the season. It's mad. He played the first game of the season compared in terms of the Premier League, and then plays the last game of the season. But yeah, listen, obviously Mikel saw something in him that he wanted to bring him to the club, and yeah, it's such a shame to lose him, man. And like I said, I think if he can develop a relationship with, for example, Martinelli, that Ben White has with Saka on that right hand side, listen, we're gonna have some very, very good, very, very good offensive play this season, man. So yeah, I'd go Urine Timber.
Yeah, I like all of the choices. I don't want to seem like I'm copping out here on this, but there was a few last season, cough, cough, Ivan Toney, that I wasn't sure about. But do you know what? I think we've got some really, really good choices in there. Now, we did have one question, and I'm just conscious of time because we tried to keep these ones a little bit shorter. And it was coming from Avon. And I'll start with you, Akhil, and then I'll get Dave and Albert's views. Just some thoughts on the City development today after the transfer stuff. So we'll just pick this one up as the final bit. Akhil, what's your thoughts, and maybe from an AST perspective? Because as we were talking about just beforehand, somebody came at me on Twitter today saying, "Well, you know, you Arsenal fans, you didn't really do anything, and you kept your mouth shut when there was words being said about the Super League." But I said, well, actually, I think you'll find the Arsenal Supporters Trust did quite a lot of work with the other fan groups in condemning some of the actions across the board. So just some thoughts, given that we've now got Man City who have come out yesterday, or supposedly, because it hasn't been officially confirmed, has it, around trying to sue the Premier League.
I mean, it's safe to say it's getting quite messy. There was quite a strong indication that something was wrong, or we've known something's been wrong, but something was wrong between the Premier League and Man City on the final day of the season, because it was very unusual for Richard Masters, the CEO of the Premier League, to not be at City when they were favourites to win it. We all knew they were going to win it, even if we did believe for a few minutes it was 2-2. So Richard Masters was at Arsenal. It was a bit of a cop out. You know, the Premier League were lucky. There was two teams that could win it, so he kind of got away with it. The whole Man City thing has been. I mean, we at our Sports Trust, we actually did an event on City, because a lot of our members were asking us what actually are the charges, what happened. So we got an investigative journalist in to do an event. But the abuse we got from Man City fans was just unreal. Like, you know, on socials, on email, stick to your club. You know, what's it got to do with you? What's actually got quite a lot to do with us, because we're all part of the Premier League. So it's, you know, if one team has cheated, allegedly cheated, then it's got a lot to do with everyone else. So it's just getting very messy. It's just, you know, you want it to be done quickly. But one of the arguments from Manchester City and their lawyers is, well, there's so many charges that we need time to look over all of them to look at. So, you know, they're using the sheer quantity of charges as a bit of our reasoning for it to take so long. You know, Pep Guardiola has continuously said that, you know, I've been reassured that we've done nothing wrong and stuff like that. But isn't it weird how they've all only got 1 year left on their contract, and there doesn't seem to be much movement? Pep Guardiola's got 1 year left. Suddenly it's, you know, I'm loving it here. We'll see what happens. Kevin De Bruyne, rumours he might go to Saudi Arabia, 1 year left. So it just feels like City are in a little bit of a... they're all sort of waiting to see what happens, and you know, if something does happen, there could be an absolute mass exodus, and that could be unreal. I know one of the charges that this journalist told us was around FA Cup bonuses, that Manchester City put something about FA Cup bonuses. Now, this is all allegedly. I'm not saying this is fact. Please don't come at me, but it was the year they lost to Wigan. So something's definitely gone wrong there, because they didn't actually win the FA Cup. So there clearly has to be a look at this. It's getting very messy. You know, essentially, the Premier League works with 20 stakeholders, 20 shareholders rather. One of them is trying to sue the Premier League. It's just going to be, it's going to be very, very messy. But you just want it sorted as quickly as possible. Ultimately, we as Arsenal, we want to know: are we playing in a level playing field here? Are we in an actual real battle, or is it a superficial fake battle? We don't know. But yeah, it's just getting very messy.
Yeah, Dave.
Sorry, I'm just listening with interest. I've had a superficial read of the Matt Lawton thing that came out yesterday. I really don't know enough about it, Chris, to comment. But I've seen other journalists comment all over Holt saying, if this happens, we might as well just pack our bags and go home. It's not going to go anywhere, is it? This suing the rest of the Premier League, it's not going to go anywhere. But I thought the Premier League, as Akhil said, it's stakeholders. It's got to be a majority vote. So they're going to need 13 other teams to support what they're saying. Presumably, that's just not going to happen, is it? So isn't it just irrelevant?
It depends. If it's a legal case, it's a little bit different. For a rule change or for a policy, you need 14 out of the 20 clubs, to agree. So
they're effectively saying in hindsight, all these stuff but if they're saying in hindsight, these payments that were made should have been allowed to be made, isn't that the same as admitting that the payments were illegal in the first place? Can't you read it that way? Is that crazy?
Arguably, there's so many angles in which I've heard, which is so interesting. Albert, I'll bring you in this as well. I've heard, obviously, I've talked about it today on my blog. You have to question the whole element of sporting integrity. You've got Man City who are complaining about the rules, having and the majority. I think tyranny of the majority is one of the regular sort of statements that are being bandied about, which I find quite ironic because it's almost like a nation state golf or nation state in the golf owned football club is arguing about democracy and the whole concept of democracy. But Albert, any thoughts from you just before we wrap up today on where you stand, or anything you'd like to just say to our listeners around your thoughts about where your feelings are at the moment on this whole Man City debacle?
Yeah. I was on the way home from work and I see it coming through on I think it's the BBC or Sky Sports. I was like, oh God. What's it? 165-page legal document. It's a mess, man. And when City come out and say they feel like they're victims of they're victims of discrimination, I don't think many people are shedding many tears, to be honest with you, because they're thinking, hold on a minute, if you've broken the rules, you're essentially complaining that what you broke the rules. What do you want people to start and say? But I think the issue you're going to have is, and now obviously City have gone down the route of trying to sue the Premier League. I'm like, wow. Just when I thought it was bad enough as it is already, it's going to get worse. Good luck proving it. Whatever City are going to pay whatever lawyers to try and get them off on some kind of technicality. I don't know what all the 115 charges are. I'm guessing some of them, and I'm not no legal expert, Chris, they're probably not worth the paper written on, but there obviously are serious enough charges in there for them to face some serious repercussions. But I just think on a wider scale as well, just to finish up, the ramifications for the balance of the Premier League going forward, what's going to happen from June 10th on? Is it June 10th for about 2 weeks? It's gonna impact massively. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens from June the 10th onwards. And yeah, man, listen, people talk about football's money's ruined football. It ruined it a long time ago, to be honest with you. That's my own personal opinion. But obviously with what's happened recently, look at the situation with Nottingham Forest and Everton. I think even Leicester City faced some kind of breach. I don't know. Is that even over the line yet? Could they still face points coming into 24-25 season?
They can start minus.
Yeah. So it's like, I know the PSR thing and the financial fair play are different things, but you think certain clubs are being dragged through the coals and things have happened to them already. And I get there's a lot of charges to go through with Manchester City. But yeah, Chris, good luck with that one, trying to sort that out, man. Seriously, it's messy.
Yeah. it's a messy one, as we started off saying, as Akhil started saying, this has all got a bit messy. I don't think anyone really wins. Manchester City certainly don't come out of this looking anything other than a little bit troublesome as an entity, to be honest with you. We wait and see what comes out and what comes from it, and maybe we'll do another show on once we know a little bit of the repercussions. But for now, it's a bit of a longer one today. Normally we try to keep these to about 40 minutes, but of course that whole Man City question, I've got a few people that have wanted to ask it, so just wanted to just play it at the end. Just wanted to say thank you very much to my wonderful guests today. David, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Akhil, it's always good. Akhil, lovely to have you on. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Friend Akhil, good to have you on.
Better, a lot more fluid.
You rescued it, Chris. You
Loving
rescued it.
friend Akhil, and Albert, always good to see you, mate.
Yes,
We should
Chris.
also say, shouldn't we? Seeing as we all do this, we should also say thoughts with Kevin. Thoughts with
Yes.
Super Kev.
Yes,
Well
Super
said,
Kev,
Dave. Absolutely. Yeah, man. Thoughts with Kevin.
Yeah,
man.
hopefully
Absolutely.
you can get through this. Thank you very much to, again, like I say, it's all of our guests. Thank you very much to Ruth Beck for being our sponsor. I'll be back next week. I think it'll be on a Thursday with our next edition of One In, One Out, One Bangs. I think Amanda is on a show tomorrow night, so you can check her out and some of the stuff that she's doing tomorrow. But from me, from Dave, from Akhil, and from Albert, thank you very much for watching. And see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye.